What's going on, everybody? Einar here, host of this podcast you're listening to, and if this is the first time you're hearing my voice, I am Einar Blackthorn, host of I Am Heathen and So Can You, and founder of the Common Hearth. Now, I'm dropping this as a little bonus episode so we can have a little discussion, because in a lot of the pagan spaces that I dwell within, quite a lot of people, most of them who like to wear the tag mythic literalist, lore purist, are leaning towards the incredibly Christian, highly dogmatic outlook of trying to tell people who they can or cannot practice with in the guise of saying it's not how it was done in antiquity. Now, this bothers me for quite a few reasons. Number one, my question to these people, who can never give anybody a straight answer when pressed with this question: who the hell are they to tell me who I can and cannot practice with? Moreover, given the inordinately scant nature of our established lore and our scant archaeological evidence, who's to say that what information was there has been lost? Now, Loki, and by extension Lokians themselves, get an absolutely atrocious fucking rap. And for the life of me, I genuinely don't understand why. Now, I've seen three types of Lokians. Three. I've seen the parody Chaos Goblin Lokian that leans into the Loki is chaos, ergo I must be chaos trope, which, whatever. I've seen people who look to Loki as a deity celebrating change, celebrating the breaking of bonds, and celebrating being on the outskirts of society, celebrating change. And this has honestly compelled me to question my own relationship with Loki, to question whether or not Loki should or somehow could be brought into my practice in any way, shape, or form. Now, there are so many people across social media who are defending and going to bat for Lokians. And you know what? These teen movie slow clap, bravo for you. There are orgs that are talking about putting out bloat for Loki, and that is also in and of itself brilliant. And I and the Common Hearth will very much be doing the same thing. I will not, however, be just running headlong into creating a bloat that honors Loki when I myself have very little understanding of him, of them, that's the word. Loki's gender fluid. We got to remember that. And I would like to attempt to cultivate a relationship with Loki to deepen my understanding of them before I sit down and commit to the creation of a bloat. Before I sit down and invite other people to take part in a bloat with me, because I would like what the Common Hearth presents as its first ever Loki bloat to be well thought out, well intended, and ring of the past that is potentially there. Now, to the folks who somehow feel Loki represents disastrous chaos or some sort of continual thorn in the side of the gods and by extension their lives, this may not be for you. And that's completely all right. You know, I think that that's one of the most beautiful things about our faith and about our practice, that it's not going to resonate with everyone. And to think that it will resonate with everyone is just It's kind of silly if you sit and think about it for a second. And what I think needs, with absolute certainty, to be done is a wider acceptance that people will not continuously follow the same school of practice as a mouthpiece on the internet. I myself have said time and time again that Loki is not my bag. Loki has never been my bag. Not in the sense that I place him in the same level of people who regard him as some form of the Christian devil, nor do I look at him as this goblin that's going to hide my car keys and make my girlfriend break up with me, because that's also really stupid. What I think needs to be done is also a dissolution of sect. You know, Vanatru, Rokatru, Thursatru, Asatru, Heathen. Heathen being a bit more of a broad term, and in my honest opinion, the narrowing of what you practice is always been something that I've found pretty silly. For the simple fact that in our stories, Aesir have become Vanir, Vanir have become Aesir, Jotun have become Aesir. And I've had it drilled into my head more often than not. This concept is an allegory for human unity, which is beautiful if you really sit and think about it. And tonight, I'd like to start my honoring of Loki by doing a reading of the Lokasenna. Aegir, also called Geimir, prepared ale for the gods after he had acquired the great kettle, which has been told of. Odin came to the feasting with Frigg, his wife. Thor did not come since he was out east, but Thor's wife Sif was there. Bragi came with his wife Idun. Tyr was there as well. He was one-handed because Fenrir had bitten his hand off when he was chained. Njord was there with his wife Skavi, his children Frey and Freya. Vidar, son of Odin, was there. Loki was there, and so were Frey's servants Bigvir and Bela. There were many other gods and elves as well. Aegir had two servants, Fimafang and Eldir. Shining gold lit the hall, and beer served itself. It was a place of great peace, and everyone praised how good Aegir's servants were. Loki could not tolerate hearing good things being said about servants, so he killed Fimafang. Then the Aesir took their shields at Loki and shouted at him and drove him into the forest and went back to drinking. But Loki came back, and in the darkness outside met Eldir. Loki said, "Tell me, Eldir, before you take another step forward, what are the gods sitting in there talking about over their beer?" Eldir said, "They are comparing their weapons and judging their readiness for war of the elves and gods sitting inside. No one is your friend. I will go into Aegir's hall and see this feast. I will bring them slanders and rumors and mix their mead with misery. You know that if you go into Aegir's hall to visit this feast, bringing slanders and rumors to spill out on their floor, they will wipe those words right off of you." Loki said, "You know, Eldir, if you and I were to compete at exchanging insults, it would be lucky for me if you said too much." Then Loki went into the hall, and when the feasters saw who had come in, they went silent. Loki said, "I come thirsty into this hall. I, Loki, after a long road to ask the gods to offer me just one drink of their famous mead. Why are you so silent, you proud gods? Why do you say nothing? You ought to show me to my seat at such a feast, or else order me to leave." Bragi said, "The gods will never show you to a seat at this feast. These gods know what company they want to share a happy evening's drinking with. Loki said, "Do you remember, Odin, when in bygone days we blended our blood? You told me then that you would never taste a drink that was not served to us both." Odin said, "Get up, Vidar. Let this father of wolves take a seat and have a drink. Let's not let Loki slander us here in Aegir's hall." Then Vidar stood up and served Loki a drink. Before he drank, Loki said, "Hail the gods and goddesses, all the high and holy Aesir, except for the one who sits furthest down from the bench. That one there, Bragi." Bragi said, "I will give you a horse and a sword. I offer you these freely in a ring, but in exchange, please don't slander the gods. Don't awake their anger." Loki said, "Since when have you had a treasure or a horse to give? Of all the gods and elves in this hall, you're the biggest coward." Bragi said, "If you were outside and you had not come inside Aegir's hall, I would be holding your severed head. I'd pay you back the way for all your lies." Loki said, "You're brave when you're sitting, but you wouldn't do that, Bragi. You bench warmer. Go ahead and strike me if you're so angry. A brave man wouldn't be afraid to do it." Idun said, "I beg you, Bragi. Think of your children by blood and by adoption. Don't slander even Loki here in Aegir's hall." Loki said, "Silence, Idun. I don't think there's any woman more lustful than you, not since you wrapped your pretty arms around the killer of your brother." Idun said, "I will not slander even Loki here in Aegir's hall. I will calm you, beer-maddened Bragi. I don't want you two to fight." Gefjun said, "Why should two gods exchange insulting words here inside this hall? I think Loki is a cheerful fellow and everyone loves him." Loki said, "Silence, Gefjun. I remember that boy who seduced you into his bed. That handsome boy gave you a necklace and you opened your thighs for him." Odin said, "You're mad, Loki. Out of your wits if you want to make Gefjun angry. I think she foresees the fates of all living things as well as I do." Loki said, "Silence, Odin. You will always judge battles unfairly for humans. You've often given defeat to the better side when you shouldn't have." Odin said, "You know, even if I judge unfairly and made the better side lose, I know that you, for 8 years, lived on the earth down below as a cow in milk and as a woman, and you've given birth to children. I call that a pervert's way of living." Loki said, "But people say you practiced womanly magic, some so dressed as a woman. You lived as a witch among the humans, and I call that a pervert's way of living." Frigg said, "You should not discuss your histories openly in front of everyone. Whatever you two gods went about doing in your younger days, that belongs in the past, and it should stay there." Loki said, "Silence, Frigg. You're Fjorgen's girl, and you've always been lustful. Think of when you, Odin's wife, accepted both Vili and Ve into your embrace." Frigg said, "You know, if I had a son like Balder sitting with me in Aegir's hall, in the presence of these gods, I'd declare you would never come out alive. You'd be killed shortly." Loki said, "You must want me to recount even more of my mischief, Frigg. After all, I'm the one who made it so that Balder will never ride home again." Freya said, "You're mad, Loki. When you boast of your sins, I believe that Frigg knows everyone's fate, even if she never speaks of it." Loki said, "Silence, Freya. You are not free from faults. I know you too well. You've played the whore with every god and elf who sits in this hall." Freya said, "You speak lies, and soon this kind of talk will cause you real trouble. The gods are angry at you, and all the goddesses too. You will go home friendless." Loki said, "Silence, Freya. You are a witch, and have dealt out many curses. I hear the gods found you lying with your brother, and that you farted then, Freya. Njord said, it's a small matter whether women sleep with their own men or others, but it's a surprise to hear such a sissy god talking here when he's born children. Njord said, silence, Njord. You were sent from the west as a hostage of the gods. The daughters of Hymir used your mouth as a urinal, and you've tasted plenty of piss. Njord said, I had some good from that when I was sent from the west as a hostage for the gods. I fathered a son beloved by all, considered a hero among the gods. Loki said, stop this now, Njord. Control yourself. I will not conceal this any longer. I know that you fathered a son, Frey, with your own sister, and I expect you've done even worse. Tyr said, Frey is the best of all gods. In the holy halls of Asgard, he doesn't make girls weep, nor cause trouble for women. He frees captives from their chains. Silence, Tyr. You don't know how to settle disputes between men. I'm thinking of your right hand, which Fenrir, my son, bit off. I lost that hand. You lost that son. We both suffered loss. Your son isn't doing well either. He remains forever in chains, waiting for Ragnarok. Silence, Tyr, or you don't know your own wife had a son by me. You poor fool. I will never pay you a penny in compensation for that. Frey said, I see that wolf sitting and drooling till Ragnarok comes, and you'll be the next one chained up, evildoer, if you don't close your mouth. Loki said, you had to pay money to get yourself a bride, and you gave up your famous sword. When the giants ride to Asgard, you won't be able to fight. Bigvir said, if I had a noble family and a grand hall, like Frey does, I'd beat this liar to his marrow and break every bone and limb in him. Loki said, who's this little fellow wagging his tail, scavenging for master's scraps? You're always in your master's ear, always twittering away while doing your mindless work. I am named Bigvir, he says, and all the gods and men say I'm brave, and I'm proud to say all the gods are enjoying their beer here. Loki said, Bigvir, you don't even know how to serve food to guests, and worse than that, I know that we can find you hiding in the straw when battles start. Heimdall said, you're drunk, Loki. Drunk to the point of foolishness. Why don't you control yourself? This kind of drunkenness makes every man say more than he means to. Loki said, silence, Heimdall. In the old days, a miserable fate was assigned to you. You have to stand all the time, stay watchful all the time, as guardian of the gods. Skadi said, this is fun for you, Loki, but you won't be speaking as a free man much longer. The gods will bind you to the rock with the cold guts of your own son. Loki said, you know, even if the gods were going to bind me to the rock with the cold guts of my own son, I was still first and last on the battlefield when we fought your father, Thiazi. Skavi said, you know, even if you were first and last on the battlefield when the gods fought against Thiazi, you will never be welcome in any home or other place where I have power. Loki said, you had kinder words for me when you were begging me to join you in your bed, but one expects as much when one speaks openly about such hidden shames. Then Sif comes forward and offered Loki a drink of mead and said, hail to you now, Loki. Take this drink I offer you of our good old mead. Do this rather than find fault with me alone among all the gods and goddesses. Loki drained the drink and said, you would be unique, Sif, if you actually were. Wary and unwelcoming to other men, but I alone know how you were unfaithful to your husband Thor, and I was the one you slept with. Bela said, listen, all the mountains are shaking. I think Thor is coming home. He'll close his mouth at slandering all the gods and men. Loki said, "Silence, Bela. You're Bigvir's wife, and you have plenty of other faults. There's no greater beast among the gods and men tonight, you lowly milkmaid." And then Thor came and said, "Silence, you sissy, or I'll let my hammer silence you instead. I'll knock your head off your shoulders, and you'll be silent and dead." Loki said, "Thor has come to the hall, but why are you making such a big show of yourself, Thor? I don't think you look half so daring at Ragnarok when the wolf swallows your father." Thor said, "Silence, you sissy, or I'll let my hammer silence you instead. I'll throw you out into Jotunheim, and no one will ever see you again." Loki said, "You'll probably never tell any human beings what you've done in Jotunheim. I remember when you sat trembling in a giant's glove. You didn't look much like Thor then." Thor said, "Silence, you sissy, or I'll let my hammer silence you instead. With my right hand, I'll beat you and break every bone in you." Loki said, "I'll expect I'll live a long time still, even if you threaten me with that hammer. You thought Utgarda Loki's food bag was challenging enough, and you left that contest still hungry." Thor said, "Silence, you sissy, or I'll let my hammer silence you instead. I plan to send you straight to hell beyond the corpse gates." Loki said, "I've spoken to the gods, and the gods' sons said everything I dared to say. But it's because of you, Thor, that I'll leave. I know you and you alone mean your threats. You made beer, Aegir, but you'll never again host a feast here. Everything you own will burn up when you feel flames on your back." And that, my friends, was the Lokasenna. And hearing Loki go full bore roast mode on the gods in their taunts, highlighting their flaws, is just so fucking Loki. Before we go tonight, in my research of Loki, in my research of themes surrounding Loki, in lieu of our regular prayer for the evening, the Hail the Gods, Hail the Folk, I wrote a prayer to Loki that I would like to dedicate in this episode. First, if you like what you heard today, if what we said here today resonated with you, consider subscribing to us here on Spotify. Consider leaving a review. Consider commenting. Every action taken by you, the listener, brings us further and further to more subscribers and more eyes and ears on this account. You can also follow us at the Common Hearth on Facebook, TikTok, and on YouTube. And with that said, my friends, please tune in every week on Thursday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for all your heathenry related needs. Now, if you have a drink, kindly raise one. Loki, Firebringer, breaker of stillness and shaper of change. You who walk between the edge of ruin and renewal, I call to you. You who unsettle the stagnant, who crack the shell so something living can emerge, who laughs in the face of false order and reminds the world that nothing stands unchanged. Kindle me in your restless spark, not to destroy without purpose, but to see what others refuse to see, to question what others blindly keep. Grant me the wisdom to wield disruption with care, to know when to unmake and when to let be. Let my chaos be creation, not collapse. Teach me your clever tongue, your shifting mind, your refusal to be bound by fear or expectation, but temper it with the awareness you so often defy. Loki, walker of many roads, balancer of unseen scales, if I must carry your flame, Let me carry it with open eyes. Let me change, but not lose myself. Let me change, but not destroy what must endure. And should I stray too far into the fire, remind me that even you have paid the price of excess. Hail to you, Loki, keeper of the sacred spark. May I learn without ever forgetting the cost. Keep the fires burning, my friends. Hail Loki.